The best way to get better at programming is to practice. And in this example, we're going to do something very similar to a previous video where we had people type in the number of steps they took and then keep a running total. Except this time, we're going to read in from a file. This sample file, as well as the data file that you need for it, is available via a link in the download file below. We'll give you a second so you can download it, and then you can either pause this video and attempt it on your own, then check your answer, or you can follow along. Alright, so let's get started. Notice I already have a couple of variables in here, int total steps and day steps. That's going to be very helpful for me. I'm also going to need to create a file for my input file. So I'm going to say ifstream, and I could call this, for example, steps in if I want. And then I'm going to go ahead and pass steps.txt to it. That way we open a file as we're creating it. Next, we're going to need to read through that entire file. So we did this in a previous example where we used a while condition loop. So you're going to say while not steps in .eof. So while I'm not at the end of my file, what is it that I'm going to do? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say steps in, point my arrows towards my day steps, because this is, I'm reading in a number. I want to go into that number. I want to be able to do it. So my arrows always point where I'm seeing my data. So I'm saying it from steps in to day steps. Then I'm going to increment my total steps. So I say total steps plus equals day steps. And this will continue on until there's no more data. Once we're done and read the whole file, then all we have to do is say cout a total of total steps was taken. So very simple process to be able to do this. If we come in here and run, we'll notice that, oh, there's a build error. Okay. And you might say, well, why did it do that? Well, total steps wasn't given an initial value. Now, a lot of times when we initial a value, it gets a default value of 0. But in this case, C and C++ want us to implicitly declare this. Now, in the old days, the C language didn't require it, which often led to some interesting errors because you never knew what it was going to start with. This is why I always like to define my variables when I'm declaring them. So not only have I declared it, give it a name, I want to initialize it, give it a value. Now, if we go and run this, we're not going to get that error. And you'll notice it comes up and says how many steps were taken. You might say, well, goodness, that's a lot of steps. Well, if I come over here and open up my steps.txt file, you notice I got 30 days worth of steps, and each one has over 5,000 steps. In some cases, I'm over 11,000 steps. So yes, this does seem like a legitimate number that we can be working with, this 240,000 steps. Yes, that seems actually about right. So not very difficult at all. And it doesn't matter how big this file is. This file could have 3 times this amount of data, 10 times this amount of data. Doesn't matter. Our source code is going to stay the same. It's going to take just a little bit longer to execute, but not much because of how fast computers are. And in fact, I'm using a solid state drive. So this becomes a very efficient way compared to having to type in all this stuff into a calculator. All right, if you found this example helpful, go ahead and give the video a like, please. Look at the other files in this series about getting better with programming in C and C++. And if you're really interested, consider subscribing to the channel to keep up with more videos on similar types of topics.